for inviting me to this. And thanks everybody for your time. I know we're all in a busy space, so appreciate the hour with us. Let me just transition to sharing my slides here 1 second. All right, just a quick check. Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so great. Thanks again for having me, Brian. And thanks again, everybody. So what I'm going to do is I'll give you just some perspective on what we're seeing here at Palo Alto Networks. I'm going to try to stay true to the agenda that was in the original invite. So really just sticking to, although Palo has we have our hands in really all aspects of security, anything from kind of what we're talking about today, which is, either on-prem or cloud security, to things like secure operations, even more like consultative, type things that we do, but really just sticking strictly to network security, giving some perspective on what we're seeing as customers are adopting kind of hybrid or, cloud-based environments. Talking about just some best practices that we're seeing either for our own customers and out there in the wild, kind of talking about how to protect cloud environments, gain visibility. And then what I'm going to do is, before we go to Q&A and have Derek join me, is I'll kind of tie off on some of the things that we're starting to see in the AI landscape. So just to give you some perspective, and this is not, I'm not trying to brag. I'm a pretty humble person. I just want to give you some perspective that we're the market leader for both hardware firewalls and software firewalls. So we see a lot of activity, we see a lot of problems, we see a lot of customers struggling to figure out how to secure their environment as they're adopting cloud, multi-cloud, hybrid cloud environments. So I just want to give you some perspective that, if not, what I'm going to be talking about is really things that we're seeing. It's not made up or from our marketing team. It's really things that we're seeing in the real world. So a quick journey, a typical journey that we're seeing customers somewhere on this scale, and I'm sure everybody on this call is here somewhere, starting with their footprint in a traditional data center, 15 or some odd years ago. At some point, adopting virtualization to really get efficiencies instead of leveraging strictly hardware environments. That idea of doing some consolidation or migration to a virtualized environment, and then starting to probably around maybe 2010 at the earliest, people started to adopt cloud. So leveraging things like Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, to really lift and shift applications to get efficiencies, whether that's just speed of innovation or some competitive advantage, to really start to leverage cloud as a environment for their applications and workloads. And then really, I think where we're at today is probably more this the stage where customers are starting to now not just lift applications into cloud, but they're actually developing in the cloud, native first, digital first, and then not just leveraging one cloud, but probably, at least the customers that we see are using, at least 2 or 3 cloud providers. So kind of having a hybrid environment. And again, not just cloud, but also still maintaining a footprint in the data center, probably with that virtualization included as well. And now in 2024, AI is the big buzzword. We're actually starting to see customers adopt AI, right? AI applications, let their employees embrace AI. And so this is becoming a new stack of technology that customers have to start to think about the security and really what to do to make sure that that's a secure and productive environment. So I know most security webinars start off with the scary news at the beginning, so I'll stick to that framework. It's no surprise, I don't think, anybody in the call, that we're still seeing attacks and threats continuing to go up and to the right. It just kind of is what it is. We're seeing more complex threats. We're seeing bigger, more of everything. Adversaries are leveraging all those technologies that I just mentioned on the previous slide. So we're starting to see automation, cloud, and even AI being used to start to initiate these attacks. And of course, this is just causing things to be more difficult and more complex. So attacks are now harder to be identified, and they're much quicker, and also a lot more zero-day that we're starting to see. Like I said, in addition to that, things are becoming more complex on the customer side. So as customers continue to kind of grow a multi-cloud strategy or a hybrid strategy that would include a physical environment, that just continues to kind of add to the overall problem, just in terms of trying to identify how what your attack surface is and how to best secure that. And then just even on the right hand side, really just operationally, things have become much more complex, because as these environments grow, what has happened organically is that customers have typically, not for any bad reason, have started to adopt different tools for different environments. And now we're at this kind of point where there's like this tool sprawl, and that's causing a lot of issues, because essentially that's leading to to misconfigurations and just human error that's unavoidable if you're using 50, 60, 70 different solutions to try to protect all these different environments. I know this looks really simplistic, and it really is, but this is honestly what we're still seeing as a really, if you distill down what we're seeing in terms of cloud attacks that are successful. Number one, they typically still continue to be sort of a network-based attack. So in that sense, really nothing different than what we might have seen 10, 15 years ago in the data center. It's really still that same framework. And what happens is typically somebody makes mistakes somewhere, and it's just inevitable. The larger your environment grows, and they leave some window open, window of opportunity. And at some point, somebody gets into your network through that vulnerability. And then because people have been spending most of their time making sure that front door has a giant lock on it, and they're not spending as much time on making sure that the windows are secure and the back door is secure, that what happens is someone gets into your network and into maybe a cloud environment, and then they're able to traverse across your network, and they're able to look for what they would consider valuable, and then once they're able to find that whether company secrets or customer data or whatever you would consider the goodies, then they're going to exfiltrate that out of your network. And so really the biggest problem that we're seeing again is that everybody is too focused on making sure that inbound traffic is secure, and they're not spending as much time as they should probably on this, what we call east-west traffic and outbound traffic to address this kind of data exfiltration issue. To add to that, and this is really, if anybody's heard the word microsegmentation, modern applications are much different than they were, let's say, applications were 10 years ago. So application workloads, you might have different, databases, shopping, web components, different pieces of those applications are living on different parts of your network. So before, you were able to essentially segment your applications and your network using physical network devices, because everything was on maybe one VLAN or one subnet. But now you have different workloads for one application that might be across different VLANs and different subnets. And so that becomes really challenging for a typical, switch or something that you might have been able to use 10 years ago. And especially if you're starting to introduce cloud, then that complexity it becomes more difficult, obviously, because you can't be using physical devices in these virtual and cloud environments. And so really what we're suggesting, and I think And I know, folks have been trying to wrestle with segmentation, microsegmentation. The goal is to actually make things more efficient and more secure. But often what happens is customers, they stumble and they try to put something together. It ends up being more complex. And so what we're seeing is really an adoption of software firewalls to address this situation, especially in a hybrid scenario, because a solution, a software firewall solution, is able to really have more granular control and apply policies at that workload level. So it doesn't really matter to the virtual firewall or software firewall where these different workloads are living, which clouds they're in, which VNet, which subnet. It doesn't matter. We're able to put those software firewalls next to those workloads and inspect that traffic and make sure that there's no way that for some reason one of those workloads was compromised, that the threat would basically not be able to continue to the other workloads. So again, a pretty simplified architecture, but what would be considered, and this could be also a physical environment, but really what I'm talking about here is a typical cloud environment. So really using software firewalls, again, if our PA series, people love our PA series physical firewalls. I would say if you could use a PA series to somehow get it into an Azure or an AWS data center, go for it. But since usually Microsoft and Amazon and AWS won't let us do that, then really the next best thing would be to have a software firewall to really do that same protection in cloud. And there's 3 different use cases, and I just covered the one on the left, which is the east-west traffic, or really that lateral movement. Which, by the way, I think I don't know what the analysts would say, but we're hearing from customers that up to like 90% of their traffic is east-west and lateral. So that's a huge piece of this puzzle. Is again not just inspecting traffic that's coming into your network, but having some plan to address this lateral traffic as well. But besides the east-west traffic, also spending time, like I mentioned, to address your outbound traffic. And again, because modern applications and developers are reaching out to the internet to get things, they're going out to GitHub for developer resources or other repositories. They're calling out to different APIs. They're calling out to get software updates. There are legitimate reasons why you have applications reaching outbound, out of your network, out of your cloud. And so you want to make sure that happens efficiently and without delay. But you don't want anything to be, you definitely don't want anything to be exfiltrated out to some, C2, some kind of command and control server, or letting someone, outbound. If somehow someone got a malicious URL in an email, you don't want them to be going out of your network. So you want to have something in place that is, again, inspecting that outbound traffic, so that you're able to let the good things out in a highly performant way, but at the same time blocking anything that really should not be out of your network. And then the bottom use case is very common. I think this is pretty obvious. This is kind of how firewall started, which is really just ensuring that there's a door guard at your front door to make sure that everybody on the list can come in, and anybody who's not on the list can't come in. Or I guess technically in the security world, it'd be the reverse. If you're on the list, you're not allowed to come in. But really making sure that inbound traffic is secured as well. I have this little light bulb here on the right-hand side. One thing that I would just mention is that you can find a million different type of solutions for inbound traffic to protect inbound traffic into your cloud environment, even something like a web application firewall or a WAF. The problem is a lot of these technologies, they still rely on old lists. Like I said, they check a list, and if it's on the list, then they don't let that through. But what we're seeing is just a huge proliferation of unknown zero-day attacks, and so most of the time, successful attacks are not on a known list yet. And so if you don't have a modern security solution, like we call a next generation firewall, or something that has some intelligence or machine, in our case, we leverage machine learning models on our firewalls so that we can see anomalies. So even if something's not on a list, we still know that, hey, you know what, this looks a little sketchy. Let's go ahead and not let it in. So you think about how you want to approach this idea of addressing potential unknown and zero-day threats. So just real quick from a product standpoint, I don't know if, I'm sure there's folks on here who are leveraging these technologies, but just to give some visibility into what Palo Alto does in terms of providing solutions in this area, we really have 3 different types of software firewalls, and then actually probably technically a 4th that I'll cover here in a bit. And that is starting with our VM series. So, and again, VM series started, I think, 11 or 12 years ago to really 100% of the use cases were to protect virtualization of VMware environment. But now, if you fast forward to 2024, probably 70% plus of folks who are VM series customers are using VM series to protect public cloud environments. So that's really our primary solution to protect both virtualization environments and cloud, and public cloud and private cloud. So our next solution is called what we call the CN series. And this is really for customers who are starting to adopt containerized development ecosystems. So environments like Kubernetes. And this is not something that everybody's doing, but there are definitely enough organizations out there that are starting to leverage containerized ecosystems for their application development, and there needs to be a solution to secure those, just like any other environment. And so we've provided a software firewall, specifically a form factor to address that use case. Even the VM series, you can use the VM series to inspect traffic going in and out of that container, but even our own solution, the VM series, has a hard time with visibility inside that container. So the CN series is actually able to go and look at those nodes that are inside the container, and again, kind of give visibility in what's going on inside that container, but also inspecting and protecting that lateral movement inside the container itself. And then the last solution I have on this slide is what we call our Cloud NGFW solutions for either AWS or Azure, and these are managed firewalls. So it's essentially our SaaS version of a firewall, and this is for customers who would prefer to keep everything up in a native environment. So they don't want to be messing around with a third party, and bringing that into a cloud. They would prefer to live in either Azure or AWS environment and really do all their work there and all the management. And at the same time, they don't want to be building firewalls and maintaining firewalls and applying updates and things like that. So this solution is really for customers who want to just have the same experience that they might have with a native AWS or Azure firewall, but really with the additional protection that we would provide with the VM. It's essentially a managed VM series. We also have solutions for both Google and Oracle, but they're OEM. So essentially, if you buy a Google NGFW firewall or an OCI firewall, underneath the hood, you are buying a VM series firewall from Palo Alto Networks. What's great about all these different software firewalls is, again, we spend a lot of time working with all these partners here on the left to make sure that they're well integrated, that they work extremely well in any of these environments, so that it doesn't matter which public cloud provider or which hypervisor provider that you might be working with, or even which containerized vendor you might be working with. We have a solution that will work extremely well in those environments. And again, to us, just like you all, while security efficacy is extremely important, performance is also very important to us. So making sure that these our solutions are integrated in a way that there's no penalty, there's no waiting around for some security solution to apply their verdict on whether something is safe or not. Now, we get a lot of questions around, well, why wouldn't I just use a native firewall from AWS or Azure? Just before it looks like I don't want, I'm not picking on Azure or AWS. They're, first of all, a very important business partner for us. We're their customer, they're our customer. We are huge business partners with all cloud providers. But yeah, but we get questions all the time. Hey, so should we use an AWS firewall or Azure firewall or a Palo Alto firewall? And so we don't have, because of our relationship with cloud providers, we don't have tons of data that we can provide openly to say, hey, well, this is why we're a lot better. But there are third parties, and there are reports and analysts and things that you can go find out out on the public internet that will show you or will explain to you why you might not want to leverage a native firewall issued to you by your cloud provider. This is just on the left-hand side here, a source from a report called Secure IQ. It was a public test, a Secure IQ lab. You can find it on the link. You can find the link out there on the internet. But what they're saying is, whereas we might be able to catch almost 100% of what they were testing against, a native firewall, and again, we've obfuscated the names here, but the two other choices from two other large cloud providers are only going to catch maybe 50% of what they threw at those firewalls. And the proof is in the pudding. So what we've seen is for about all the customers who have been trying to adopt cloud, roughly half of those organizations have experienced some sort of security issue, and there might be a correlation between if they're using a native issued firewall and if they're experiencing issues. This could be one of the reasons why they're experiencing those issues. So I like to think of it as, on my home computer, I would feel comfortable using the anti-malware and anti-virus that comes native with my operating system if it was just me using that computer, but my kids use that computer and they go out and they do all sorts of crazy things on weird gaming sites and things like that. And so it makes sense for me to add additional capabilities and pay for better solutions than what comes for free with my computer. So sort of a similar analogy.
I'd like to add on to that.
Yeah.
I like to think of it as, with AWS or Azure, they're great at doing cloud technologies, but Palo Alto is great at doing security. Let them do what they do best. And Palo really outshines the native firewall capabilities, although it might be familiar. I would always go with the Palo Alto.
Thanks, Derek. Yeah, I'll just say thank you for that. There are things I just, it's hard for me to say because of our relationship with CSPs, but yeah, I appreciate that input. So when I think of firewalls, I think of them as like a cell phone or a modern cell phone you would buy today. So while we have fantastic solutions, both hardware and software firewalls, the fact is that some of these threats that we're seeing out there are extremely advanced. And like I said earlier, some of these adversaries are leveraging cloud technologies and even AI now, ML. And so because we're seeing so many new threats, sophisticated threats, zero-day threats, having just the firewall itself or providing a firewall is really not the only thing that we do. We also provide what we call security subscriptions or security services on top of those firewalls. So just like a cell phone, you buy the cell phone to give you capabilities in terms of making phone calls, sending texts, taking pictures, sort of all the things that you would get natively from that mobile phone. But if you want additional capabilities, there might be reasons why you would want to buy apps and add apps to that phone. So again, just like phones, what we do is we have a suite of solutions that we provide that you're able to add to these firewalls depending on the environment and depending on the use case that you have those software firewalls in. So These may not be services you would add, like you wouldn't add necessarily all these to every software firewall that you have, or for that matter, every hardware firewall you have. But for different use cases, there might be reasons why you would want to add DNS security or URL filtering or sandboxing. So there are different scenarios. And what we've done is probably, I don't know, 10 years ago, we only had one or two of these services. And over time, we've added additional services that, again, maybe not every customer needs or every environment needs or every firewall needs, but we've added these services because we're starting to see different use cases for different scenarios that customers might want to add additional capabilities to these firewalls. And again, we don't want to add these to every firewall because that would increase the cost of that firewall, and then it would be unfair to customers who maybe don't have those use cases in their environment. So this is really kind of a pick your own solution depending on the scenario that you're trying to solve for. But again, and also just to mention, we've continued the journey in terms of not just adding additional services, but improving these services. So a lot of these you'll see are now what we call advanced versions. And so really what we're doing is we're leveraging additional ML models to continue looking for these zero-day threats that we're starting to see, really explode in today's market. So switching gears real quick, a big thing for the customers that we work with is really this idea of vendor consolidation. And we're known as, again, you could look at any analyst report. We're always going to be in the upper right-hand corner for firewalls, again, whether that's hardware firewalls or software firewalls. So we're known as this sort of best-of-breed solution for network security and other different areas. But for us, based on customers' feedback and desire, we're trying to do everything we can to provide a platform that they can leverage as well. So we sent out a survey to our customers. About 3/4 of them said, yeah, you know what? We really want to reduce the number of security solutions that we're leveraging. I talked to a customer at a presentation a couple months ago that had 11 different firewalls. And I only know of like 3 or 4 folks that we run into a lot. So it blew me away that somebody would actually be using 11 different firewalls, because you think about the complexity that involves having different management solutions, having to rewrite different policies, just teaching your people how to use all these different tools. That just becomes a big problem. And Brian mentioned this at the beginning of the call. A lot of our customers are trying to adopt some type of zero trust framework. And again, zero trust is a very overly used term in the security world. And I was joking before the call that if you have 10 different people in the room, you're going to have 12 different opinions on what zero trust is. And so I'm not going to dictate what we think you should call zero trust, but really this is what we consider zero trust at Palo. And as you can imagine, we're a huge target for attackers. Every day we see a mind-blowing amount of attacks on our own network. And so the way we try to survive these attacks is really by adopting a zero trust framework, and the idea of eliminating implicit trust and then continuously validating that trust. That's really the framework that we adhere to at Palo. And again, tying it back to this idea of using different technologies, it becomes really complex to try to achieve some type of zero trust if you're leveraging all these different solutions, because they often don't work together. They might be competitors. Every time one gets acquired or needs an update, then usually you have to do work to integrate everything back together. And so as you have all these different tools, there's just more room for human error, and it makes it more difficult to remove that implicit trust. So really what we've done from a company standpoint is we try to do all we can to make sure that our solutions are unified, they work well together, they're talking the same language. If we can, we do sort of that 1 + 1 = 3 concept. So the more you're leveraging our technologies, you're actually getting a better experience. And again, to us, it doesn't matter where you want to be living, or which environment you're trying to bring on or leverage, whether it's data center, public cloud, branch office, remote user. You can leverage the same technology across all these different environments, and with a unified management solution. And real quick, so we have customers who say, you know what, okay, we hear what you're saying, but are you suggesting we use Palo for everything? And I say, well, we do. We use we use Palo. But joking aside, we have customers who say, okay, you know what, we have complete confidence in your platform. And now what they do is they come to us and they say, hey, we have a new environment, or we have a new category that we're trying to solve for. Do you have something that we can leverage? And the answer is often yes. So, again, whether it's the firewalls themselves, or these subscriptions that you can add, or the management solution that you're using to manage these firewall solutions, typically you're able to use something from Palo Alto to solve for these. Whereas, previously you might have a tool for each one of these categories, which again is just really complicated. I know a lot of customers here on the call are probably our hardware PA series customers. So even if you decided, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket, I would suggest that you at least think about leveraging, if you are a PA series customer, at least leveraging the VM series software firewalls in any scenario where you can't use a PA series. And again, this section in the middle is really, I would argue there are more similarities between our hardware firewalls and our software firewalls, because they leverage the same operating system, they have the same security efficacy, they use the same architecture, kind of this idea of single pass layer 7 to provide that security efficacy. They both leverage the same security solutions that I mentioned, the subscriptions that you can add, and they leverage the same management solution for either form factor. So on hardware side, you might be using your hardware firewalls for physical environments. We just launched a bunch of ruggedized solutions. So you might have harsh environments, hot, cold, dusty. They're using PA Series 4. You might be using them for remote branches. But again, on the software side, if there's any area where you can't use a PA series, whether it's virtualized, public cloud, containerized, and now AI applications, that's really a perfect fit for our software firewalls. Real quick, I'm going to touch base on our newest management solution. I'm probably going to go a little faster through this just because I want to get to the AI section, which is kind of really the newest thing that we're seeing. But this idea of having a single unified solution, again, it doesn't matter if it's on-prem using physical firewalls, if you're using virtualized, or if you're in public cloud, or if you're in all three, we have a solution. Folks here might be familiar with what we call Panorama, but now we also have a new solution called Strata Cloud Manager. And this is really something that we launched last year. And this is for companies who are, they maybe have smaller security teams, or they have people who maybe aren't experts in how to write policies, and they're not security experts. So the idea is, what we've done is created a platform that allows you to manage your firewalls in a way that we're providing you sort of guardrails and best practices, so that someone does make a mistake in terms of writing a policy, whereas Panorama, they wouldn't catch, if you wrote a bad wrote a bad policy, no one's going to catch that necessarily. But with this new solution, it might say, hey, wait a second, are you sure you want to write that policy in that way, and give you some suggestions to rewrite it in a better way. So really what we're doing is we're aggregating a couple different solutions. We're getting telemetry from hardware firewalls, software firewalls. If you're leveraging the security subscriptions on those firewalls, and even if you are using any of our SASE solutions, more on the SD-WAN side of things, then it's pulling in all these different data sources. It's applying some machine learning along with pulling in some best practices, and then surfacing all those to you on a single dashboard. So again, for folks who are leveraging Panorama today, this is looking very different than probably your Panorama experience. But again, this is a unified dashboard to kind of give you a quick snapshot of all your different users, all your different devices, all your different applications, risks and threats that are happening, operational health. So just a massive amount of information that's now being shown to you versus just using the tool to manage your policies for your firewalls. And also doing things proactively. So this is just one good. This is a simple use case, but if you had a firewall where the power supply was starting to fail, this solution can alert you up to 7 days in advance to say, hey, you know what? It looks to me like that firewall's power supply is failing. You can take a step further and actually have the solution order you a replacement so that there's no human interaction. It basically identifies that problem and just takes care of that replacement for you, so that basically after those 7 days, you already have a new power supply that you can basically just swap out. Also, just adding automations to ensure that, again, if there are issues and alerts that are happening, that you can not just have visibility to those alerts, but actually let the system take care of those for you, so that there's automation happening, with machine learning that essentially can take care of some of these proactively without humans having to look into it like they would historically. And then, like I mentioned again, putting guardrails on when you do write configurations and policies to make sure that those are written in best practice framework. And the last thing is we've just added this idea of co-pilots. So if you've heard about the co-pilots in other technologies in different areas, what we've done is we're applying co-pilots to the management solution, so you're able to use natural human interaction, asking this tool, hey, take a look at this, or tell me how our users are doing in this area, or take a look at this, and having a kind of a human response come back to you like you would with a modern kind of AI application experience. All right, so I'm going to cover off in 5 minutes. I'll cover just what we're seeing in AI in a nutshell. The long and short of it is that about half of the organizations that we're talking to right now are starting to adopt AI, and about 100% are talking about leveraging AI in the next 12 months. So if you're not looking at it today, the likelihood is that you'll be trying to put your arms around AI at some point. And really, there's a lot of concern about AI security. And so in fact, about a year ago, we started working on AI security. But this past spring, we launched a new suite of solutions. And these suite of solutions are really broken up into two different use cases. On the left-hand side, it is making sure that if you are encouraging your employees to leverage third-party LLMs like ChatGPT to become more efficient, writing documentations or presentations, or if you have developers that are leveraging new, ML models to write code for them, then basically putting guardrails around that to make sure that they're not either uploading company secrets or customer PII or something else you don't want them to be feeding into a prompt, and the other way around. So making sure that if that third-party LLM that they're reaching out to has been compromised, that it's not sending back some sort of malicious code or a bad URL or something like that. And on the right-hand side, we're starting to see customers develop their own AI applications. So they're writing things like chatbots and shopping assistants, and just all sorts of different use cases. But again, kind of putting some guardrails around that and inspecting that traffic that's happening around the AI application. So we have three solutions. On the left-hand side, what we're calling AI Access, to kind of provide some guardrails around the AI usage for company employees. And then the two on the right-hand side is really our AI SPM for kind of more application and supply chain security, and then AI runtime security on the right-hand side. And the AI, and I'll skip here, that last solution is really to address this new ecosystem that you're starting to introduce into your environment. So if you're starting to write any AI applications, that application is reaching out to an AI model. That AI model is reaching out to some sort of a data set, and then you have this traffic going in and out of the internet again to be reaching out for updates and plugins and things like that. All that traffic needs to be inspected, just like your traditional data center or cloud traffic. So this is a whole new ecosystem that really needs to be inspected. And we have essentially software firewall. If it's not a software firewall, but one way to deploy the solution that we have to inspect this new AI related traffic is think of it as a software firewall. So you would place a software firewall, or what we call AI runtime, in the middle of this traffic to inspect, to make sure things aren't happening. These are just some common use cases or some things we're actually starting to see in real world. So these are not theoretical. These are things that we're starting to keep an eye on in our threat intelligence team. So for customers who are adopting AI, you want to make sure you have something in place that's inspecting this traffic that's flowing in between, again, your applications, your models, and the data sets. We have a new pane of glass that fits into that solution I mentioned before, our Strata Cloud Manager. There's basically a new page on that console that is designed specifically to look at your application, your data, and your models if you are developing an AI application. So last slide, and I'm going to open it up. Really what we're after again is these new specific threats. These are not things that anybody here on this phone call, including me, saw 12 months ago. Now we're starting to see these happening. And so this is really something that we are spending almost, I wouldn't say all of our time. This is really something that we're heavily focused on. And because I think we're going to see huge adoption of this again in the next 12 to 24 months. With that, I'll open it up and I'll stop sharing, and then we can ask questions. I'll turn it over to you, Derek, too, if you want to say anything on your side.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm happy. I was scrolling through the list of participants. I've worked with a few people, so I'm happy to see the familiar faces as well as the new faces. Thank you for the PowerPoint and everything. It was really good.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot.
I just wanted to touch on two things more specifically with Choice and Palo Alto's, and kind of on our professional services side. We've built these environments, and we can build these or provide consultation or support for any of it. And I'm happy to provide that assistance. On the more hardware side of things, I know a lot of people these days are looking at swapping out the 200 series or the 800 series and trying to get something faster. We can provide these services, and I just kind of wanted to highlight that. And as was mentioned earlier, the best practice, the AI ops and best practice assessments, we are definitely able to do that and kind of run through what we can do and what we can change, or provide recommendations on the different services that your Palo Alto probably already has the function for, and all that. And then on the managed services front, we can provide monitoring and software upgrades and backups and day-to-day management. And it's a really nice service. We do a good job, I promise. And that's all I got.
Eric and Derek, thank you guys so much for your efforts, and thank you guys for sharing out. I guess the ask to the prospects and customers on here is, one, if you're already a Palo customer, we'd love to have a conversation just on how to make sure that we're getting the most out of the solution and what else we could be doing, and engage in not only our